Good evening, residents of Everett, Washington. I would like to call to order the Everett City Council meeting of October 5th, 2022, and welcome everyone to City Council chambers. City Council is conducting our weekly council meeting hybrid. This will allow us to reach members of our community who wish to participate via Zoom or those who wish to attend in person in the chambers this evening. It is our hope to continue this format to be as accessible as possible to our community. For those who wish to participate in the future via Zoom, you may find the public comment registration form on the City of Everett website under the City Council Department. Once you go to Register Here to provide comment via Zoom, you will need to fill out the form completely if you wish to provide public comment at a future meeting. After the public comment form is submitted, you'll receive an email confirmation with the Zoom link and the phone number to the meeting. Participants must submit this form at least 30 minutes prior to the meeting. Forms submitted after that time will not receive the Zoom link number to speak, but may still participate the day of the meeting by coming in person to the council chambers right up before the meeting begins. Please note that we do not accept comments on any kind of campaigning, whether for or against ballot measures or candidates running for office. We also do not accept comments focused on personal matters that are unrelated to city business. With that, Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mayor Franklin.
Here.
Councilmember Fossey.
Here.
Councilmember Zerlingo.
Here.
Councilmember Vogely.
Here.
Councilmember Schwab.
Here.
Councilmember Ryan.
Here.
Vice President Toohey.
Here.
President Stonecipher.
Excused. I would like to ask Scout Rudolph, wait a minute, I have it. Rude Ranch. Okay, there we go. He does that little thing. Rude Ranch, right? Got it. To lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Okay. Now I would like to ask Councilmember Fossey to read the land acknowledgement.
The City Council wishes to acknowledge the original inhabitants of this place, the Shtahobes people and their successors, the Tulalip tribes. Since time immemorial, they have hunted, fished, gathered on, and taken care of these lands and waters. We respect their sovereignty, their right to self-determination, and honor their sacred spiritual connection with the land and water. We will strive to be honest about our past mistakes and bring about a future that includes their people, stories, and voices to form a more and just, equitable society.
All right, thank you. Do I have a motion for the approval of the minutes of September 28th, 2022?
So moved.
Okay, second?
Second.
Thank you. Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Fossey.
Yes.
Councilmember Zerlingo.
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely.
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab.
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
Vice President Toohey.
Yes. Mayor Franklin, good evening.
Good evening, Vice President Toohey. I have no comments tonight. Thank you.
Okay. Angie, do we have anyone signed up to speak this evening?
Hi, Vice President Toohey. We have one person signed up to speak here. So if Steve would please come to the podium and start by giving your full name and the city you reside. You'll have 3 minutes to speak, and when you have 30 seconds left, I'll let you know.
Thank you.
Thanks.
My name is Steve Ose. I live in Everett, Washington. I've lived here my whole life. Except for my years in the military, this has been my home here, and I have great respect for my home. And I love it here. My parents were born here. My grandparents were born here. My kids were born here. My granddaughter was born here. This is my home, and I take it very seriously that Everett is one of the best cities around. Recently, I've become rather concerned because there's been studies about whether or not there should be a merger between Everett Transit, which is a jewel for Everett, and community transit. I'm the union president for our bus drivers here in Everett, and I have drivers coming to me telling me they can't sleep at night because they're concerned about a possible merger. I know you've all heard about it. If you've done any research, you know that a merger is not beneficial to Everett. It doubles our transit sales tax. We lose control of our transit agency. We don't get to control where our routes go anymore. Our citizens here in Everett don't like community transit the way it operates, as well as they like Everett Transit. Why we would want to give away control of our own transit agency to somebody else, anybody else, is beyond my reasoning. And it is time to make the decision that no, we're not going to do it. There's leadership over at Community Transit where they are telling their people that it's a done deal. Nobody can stop this. It's going to be done. And their drivers and many of my drivers are friends. And they talk to each other and they hear what each other are saying. And that's what's causing the sleepless nights for my members. We need to do it right. We need to let them know that, yeah, we've looked into it. It's not a good idea. We're going to chase big ticket items out of the city. Sales tax doubles on transit items. And we need to take care of Everett. And so I've just barely scratched the surface on this. Nobody has called me from the council. Many of you know me. And I'm here. You know how to get a hold of me. Please do, and we can talk more in depth. This is something that needs to not happen. And we need to take care of the employees and the citizens of Everett by putting this to rest. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Steve. Thank you. All right, moving on now to council comments and liaison reports. We'll start with Councilmember Vogely tonight.
Thank you. Good evening. One thing I would like to mention is next week is Emergency Nurses Week, and I would ask the mayor to consider writing a proclamation or working together or whatever for that, to give a shout out to our emergency nurses. And next thing is, I would like to say that homelessness is a housing issue. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilmembers Arlingo.
In the category of potentially boring but certainly important issues today and related to transit, I spent a little over 2 hours with the Federal Transit Administration Funding Work Group of the Transportation Policy Board of the Puget Sound Regional Council. That's a dozen words to identify a single committee. As a group, we advise on policies to determine how available federal funding will be allocated for transit. And it's important for us to do our best to represent the interests of Everett and its community members. The structure around this funding is complicated and full of potential unintended consequences, and the time scales are in years. I want specifically to thank Melinda Adams, the Transportation Services Manager for Everett Transit, for educating me on the details of this, providing perspective and advice. She was here before the council a couple of weeks ago to provide a transit service review, and I appreciate her hard and tremendously well-informed work in this. This is really important stuff for us to get right, and I'll be working with the PSRC, Transportation Policy Board, to get some questions out at the request of the moderator to help those of us on the group understand each other's transit situations better, because one of the concerns that's come up for us is that in trying to work together in this, if we don't understand the special challenges and situations of each of our transit systems, and they are very different, and indeed ET and CT are different that way as well, we're not going to be able to come to good agreement or come to that efficiently. So I want to thank again Melinda on that, and the Everett Transit staff and leadership. That's been real helpful in trying to do the right thing here. We're fortunate to have such good staff. And that's all for me. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Fosse.
Thank you. I believe all I have to say today is Happy World Teachers' Day.
Thank you. And Councilmember Brine.
Great. Hi, folks. Last week I had an opportunity to attend the Emma Ewell Park opening, which was fantabulous. Fantabulous. And my children even made a guest appearance, which was totally adorable. So if you haven't had a chance, I would definitely recommend checking out the park. It's really amazing. This Saturday, October 8th at 10:30, Historic Everett is hosting a cemetery tour, very appropriate for October. So lots of really amazing folks from Everett's past are in the Evergreen Cemetery, and it's just a great place to learn about Everett's history and how we got to where we are. The Everett Public Library launched their One Everett, One Book campaign, and starting today, you can join the Spice Club. I've been wondering if you're female, if you're a Spice Girl at that point, but you can join the Spice Club, and starting today through February 2023, every Wednesday, you can stop by either of your favorite branch to pick up a spice packet, a recipe, and just enjoy different books and authors that are food focused. Starting with next Tuesday, the 11th at Everett Performing Arts is Rima Sill, and the event is a conversation with her as a chef and author. So I just would recommend everybody check it out and enjoy the great food while you're at it. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Schwab.
Yeah, thank you. Last week I attended the Snohomish County Cities Association. It's a quarterly group. Snohomish County did a presentation of the 1/10 of 1% sales tax that they're going to provide for housing and support services. It seems like a very good program. There was one thing that a lot of us, including myself, stressed is the portion of maintenance and upkeep. Specifically, everyone knows recently they purchased the hotel there in South Everett, Everett Mall Way. Actually, funds for that were done from a different grant, but they will be using these funds to keep that property up looking nice and well-maintained. So I think that's very important. Not only do the occupants deserve a nice place to live, but it's also good for the business community and the community at large to have these projects fit in very well with the neighbors. Also, the AWC did a presentation. That's Association of Washington Cities, Association of 291 cities in Washington, and they're working on their legislative priorities. And I'll go ahead and pass those, instead of going over those tonight, I'll pass them out in your email or at your desk. And also, as far as priorities for this upcoming legislature, the Government Affairs Committee for our council will be meeting right after Thanksgiving. So if you guys have, members here have ideas or some issues they'd like us to put on that agenda, just let me know as soon as possible. And I'm hoping that some of the AWC priorities will at least spur some baseline for you guys to think about. I also attended the View Ridge Madison Neighborhood Group. The mayor showed up and did a nice job with her budget priorities. Thank you. It was well received and answered a lot of tough questions about public safety. And by far one of the #1 priorities for that neighborhood. And I can't stress, I know we've talked about it quite a bit, but the importance of these management plans when it comes to our pallet shelter projects. So that's all. Thank you.
And I just have one comment. I want to commend and thank the mayor for her leadership with the latest public safety initiative that was announced this week in accord with the other city mayors around the county. And, it was very impressive press release that they had, press conference that they had this week, and really look forward to getting some things done so that we can really support our armed patrols and firefighters and everybody out there. So I want to thank you for your leadership on that. Do we have any administrative update this evening?
Nothing this evening other than I'll work with staff and reach out to you, Councilmember Vogely, on the proclamation for Emergency Nurses Week.
Great. And City Attorney, Mr. Hall, do we have anything?
There is no report from legal tonight, and we are not requesting an executive session. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll move on now. Do I have a motion? There are 5 consent items. Do I have a motion for those?
Motion made to approve those consent items.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Fosse,
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo,
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely,
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab,
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan,
Yes.
Vice President Tui.
Yes. Do we have any, we have one proposed action item, which has already been read. The third and final reading will be October 12th, 2022. Do I have any questions on the proposed action item? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to the action items. Action item number 6, adopt a resolution concurring with staff recommendation and authorizing the mayor to implement the next steps for ARPA-funded projects and initiatives listed in the resolution recital C. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Are there any other questions?
Yes.
Yes,
I know there
Councilmember
was,
Schwab.
in our last meeting, thank you, in our last meeting, there was a lot of discussion. I was just wondering if any of the council members here, if there was some resolution to some of the discussion, or it seemed like it lasted an hour, I'm just gonna say it. So has some of the issues been resolved, or do we have something going forward, or we have some plans? So I'm asking my colleagues here if they would like to make a comment.
Okay. I haven't heard of anything. That's
I'll
come up.
just say, for some reason, I was thinking this was a 3-reading thing. I keep getting that mixed up with resolutions and ordinances, and this is it. This is the time to say it. So, I don't have anything right now.
Okay. Councilmember Zarlingo, your light's on. Do you have anything?
No, nothing more from me.
All right. Councilmember Ryan?
Yeah, I did have a comment, but if anybody wanted to follow up on what Councilmember Schwab was asking
You bet.
first, that'd be fine.
Okay. All right. Seeing none? Councilmember Ryan?
I did have a comment that I wanted to make.
Yes.
So earlier this year, I had suggested that the council as a whole have a discussion about our priorities and initiatives and values that we'd like to see reflected in ARPA allocations. I think a public discussion would have helped with the strategic approach to make sure we're all heading in the same direction on this 3-legged race. Though discussions instead moved to our committees and a more siloed approach was taken, I'm hopeful that council members' priorities will still be taken into consideration as internal discussions continue. The pandemic has impacted everyone differently, and our most vulnerable populations, senior, disabled, BIPOC, women, and the intersections thereof have been disproportionately impacted. An equitable recovery from COVID addresses the systemic inequities that have been exacerbated by the pandemic in a way that we as a city can use these dollars to build a better system is to address the fact that our city is a childcare desert. I will be a yes vote today for this resolution and allocation, but as chair of the Economic and Cultural Vitality Committee, I will be working with committee members and staff to include childcare and workforce pathways for professionals to enter into childcare into the next round of ARPA allocations. Thank you.
Great. Appreciate that. Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Vogely?
I'd just like to second what Councilmember Ryan said.
All right. Good. All right.
It's all coming back to me now. Our very long meeting last week. And so I just want to mention the public safety gun buyback incentive. And I would like more of that. If we have an increase in shootings in our city and our county and our state, et cetera, our country might have a problem with guns. And that would be something to really take a look at besides housing, which I'm very much in favor of, all of it.
And I agree with that, and hopefully it'll be a successful buyback program, and we'll see the need is greater than what we planned, so. Okay, any other questions? All right.
Can I ask for clarification? More of that from ARPA funding or more from that in the future after this program is completed?
As concerned with, thank you for that question, Councilmember Fosse. All in general, I'm not sure what more we can, this isn't very much money, $25,000 to go against, guns and safety in our neighborhoods and state. So I'm not sure which is more important, a decrease in guns or an increase in housing, but I don't have a real answer for you. Not a specific answer. I want them both and I want them now.
Gotcha.
Thanks.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Okay, seeing none, clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Fosse,
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo,
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely,
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab,
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
Vice President Tui.
Yes. Moving on to our council briefing agenda, these items come before the city council serving as a council committee of the whole and are likely to be scheduled at a future meeting. Item number 7 is Council Bill 2210-41, first reading, adopt an ordinance relating to Uniform Code Enforcement Procedures, repealing Everett Municipal Code Chapter 1.20, adopting a new Chapter 1.20, and amending other portions of the Everett Municipal Code to update applicable cross-references. Third and final reading on October 19th, 2022. And tonight we have Ryan Sass, our Public Works Director, to start the briefing.
Good evening, Ryan Sass with Public Works. I'm happy to have the opportunity to introduce our team. Tonight we have, for tonight's briefing, we have our building official, Tony Lee, who is our, leads our permit services division, and with him, Ann Weish from our code enforcement unit, and our outside legal counsel, Emily Miner, who assisted greatly in developing this new code section. So with that, turn it over to you, Tony.
Thank you, Ryan. Good evening, Tony Lee with Public Works. We thank you for the opportunity to bring this proposal before you tonight. Thank you. Our code enforcement unit is responsible for investigating complaints of many of the violations provided in the Everett Municipal Code. Under the current system, if the complaint is validated and not voluntarily abated, the recourse is to direct the respondent to a hearing where the hearing examiner may issue an order and fine. Our current system, located in EMC Section 1.20, has been in place for over 20 years and has grown burdensome and unwieldy for all involved, including the code violators, neighbors who lodge complaints, the tax base, and city staff. This proposal does not add new violations to the EMC, but is focused on changing the procedures on how the code unit operates. It also brings the city in line with the majority of other local jurisdictions in terms of how they respond to and process code violations. In our current system, if voluntary compliance is not achieved, the code officer will prepare a violation citation for the violations of code that are present on the property. The citation schedules the property owner to appear before the hearing examiner. The code officer, prior to the hearing, will prepare a proposed order which includes the violations, abatement deadlines, and recommended fine. Currently, hearings are scheduled 2 months out. At the hearing, the examiner hears the testimony of both the city and respondent. The hearing examiner then renders a decision, denies or issues the order, and can assess a fine. This must be done for every alleged violation of each code section if the city is to secure an order and fine. In our current system, the financial burden for this process is borne by the general fund, the taxpayers, and not the code violators themselves. With a total ability of up to 8 hearings every other week and the standard possible fine assessment of $500 per violation, the maximum cost recovery for this process is $100,000 a year. In practice, however, our typical recovery is half of that. Our proposed approach includes several changes in how we operate. The most impactful operational change is allowing the code officers to not only prepare orders and suggest fines, as they currently do now, but to issue the orders and fines without having to first take a violation to the hearing examiner. This change alone will have far-reaching benefits. The scope of enforcement is also expanded to include violations of the Everett Municipal Code that the code unit currently has no authority to assist with. This revision will now allow the code unit to be a conduit for compliance with the majority of statutes in the EMC, providing a more practical path that is not currently available to many other divisions. The appeal process is significantly revised. The current appeal for an order issued by the hearing examiner is to Superior Court. This is an expensive, complicated, and untimely process for both the petitioner and the city. This revision lowers the first appeal from Superior Court to the hearing examiner level. This is a more approachable, and accessible process for all involved. It allows the subject matter experts, the code officers, to work directly with the violators and effect change at the lowest staff levels. Thank you. New tools are proposed to assist with cost recovery. These efforts will help shift the financial burden from the tax base to those violating the codes. The most significant change is the ability to file liens for unpaid fines, abatement costs, and staff time. To assist with the recreation of our process, we looked to the adopted processes of other jurisdictions as well as the International Property Maintenance Code. Perhaps most importantly, we secured the services of outside counsel, without whom Ann and I would still be floundering. Thank you, David.
Thanks for the compliment.
That is the high-level summary of the revisions. Now we provide a few specifics of this proposal. A typical case starts with the code unit receiving a complaint. At that point, a courtesy letter is sent out to the property owner. The letter states that a code officer will be visiting the property within 2 weeks. If there are no issues remaining, or if the complaint was in error, the case is closed. If there is a violation found, the officer will then issue a corrective action notice. The purpose is to inform the violator of the code provisions they are violating and request that they bring their property into compliance within a specified time frame. It will also include information about what may happen if they choose not to comply with the notice. An additional tool is the voluntary compliance agreement. This is a contract between the violator and city whereby the violator agrees to abate the violations within a specific timeline and according to specific conditions. If the violator does not bring their property into compliance, then per the terms of the agreement, the city can enter their property and abate the violations at the owner's sole expense. If the previous methods of compliance have not been successful, or when there are life safety issues that require immediate attention, such as buildings that are unlawful, unfit for occupancy, dangerous or unsafe, a notice and order would be issued by the code officer. Daily fines may accrue depending on the situation. Cost recovery is a prime component of this proposal. The city will be authorized to assess all costs related to a specific case to the responsible party. The ability to levy a special assessment will help ensure that the city can collect on outstanding debts. Penalties for noncompliance will include fines. We currently already have the authority to assess a $500 fine per day per violation. It is not practical to employ, however, because we would be required to write a new violation citation for each additional day the violation continues. Each individual citation would then have to go to the hearing examiner for adjudication. Our system is not capable of handling this volume of work. In this proposal, a fine of $250 per day per violation could be assessed and continue to accrue without having to write a new notice and order each day. The persons responsible for the violations would be obligated to pay the fines. We currently send cases of non-payment to collections and will continue to do so for small assessments. The lien process will be reserved for larger accrued penalties. Again, the appeals process is simplified and clarified and will begin at the city level versus Superior Court level. The appeal must be timely and for cause. The overall design of the program is to provide more ability and versatility to the code officers to do their jobs. We will continue to help owners remediate violations. We will gain the ability to recover costs and shift the burden of compliance from the tax base to the violators. Thank you for your time and consideration of this very complex and significant proposal. We would be happy to field any questions you may have.
All right, thank you. Do I have questions? Yes, Councilmember Zarlingo.
Well, what about the sequence if a fine is issued per day that accrues day after day after day? Is there some part of the process then that at some point that will trigger the city to take action to remediate the problem and then pass the costs along? Or does that go on infinitely until the property value is exhausted, or what's the?
It is not our intention to have that go on infinitely. We want you to set caps for certain types of violations per se. So for instance, it would be outrageous for me to come before council and say, we've accrued $50,000 fine for someone who hasn't mowed their grass in a particular manner. It might, however, not be egregious for me to do so if we have an unlawful, unsafe type building where we've got 50 dwellings units that are unlawful and need to be vacated. So we want to make the system appropriate to the violation we have. Because we have such a wide variety of violations, everything from nuisance violations to building code violations to things that are very complicated or very simple to fix, we need a system that's able to expand and contract based on that.
Okay, Councilmember, I think Vogely was.
Thank you so much. I would have said hi in the hall, but I thought you were somebody else. So nice to see you in person for real. Thank you for your presentation, and I have a couple of questions. Who inspects the properties? Like, is it Public Works or?
Yes. So the entire team is under the umbrella of Public Works. Within that, we have the code enforcement officers, the code enforcement unit. They have a primary responsibility for inspection. However, because we're all part of the same team, the other part of my family is the building division and the public works division, and we have inspectors on those tools as well. Oftentimes, the code enforcement officers can identify a problem, but not the entirety of it, where then we get the building inspectors involved as well.
Okay, and when I hear officer, I think law enforcement officer. Is a code compliance officer a law enforcement officer?
They are not law enforcement officers.
Okay, just making certain I know exactly what I'm talking about. Earlier, when a code could be unlawful for occupancy, does this go in both ways, I guess, for homes and dwellings and businesses, or just homes and like apartments and whatnot?
It covers the entire variety of everything in front of us that we enforce. The building code and the other codes that we're talking about are from everything from single-family dwellings to the hospitals to everything in between.
Okay, and that's all I have. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Schwab.
Yeah, thank you. Great presentation. Would this include a tenant of a large apartment complex that reported a violation in their building?
Yes, that is a standard complaint or case that we would carry.
Thank you. And then at what point, could you explain a little bit, at what point would there be a lien applied to the property?
Yes, if we have to take action, for instance, if we have to board a property, that is an expensive process for the city, and we would like to be reimbursed for that. If we have an accrual of fines that are substantial enough to go past the collections agency into the lien department, we would then go that route. We need to recoup city time on this. For instance, it takes hours just to get to a notice and order level. The city's already spent a significant amount of time. The way I counsel our code officers is you get paid for every minute of every day that you're operating, right? You're responsible to the citizenry, the tax base, for every minute, every hour of that day. Who's paying that bill? Is it going to be the violators, or is it going to be the tax base? And I want them to work on behalf of the tax base and get compensated by the violators.
And then one more question. Thank you. This is separate than a fire code violation. Are you going to be could there be a combination of different violations in the same building?
Thank you.
Yeah.
There are typically overlapping codes between the building code and the fire code. Most of those codes are more or less a handoff between myself and the fire marshal, who is my counterpart. Currently, the fire marshal goes to the hearing examiner directly. We will actually be able to assist the fire marshal in a much better way, because although he can do that, he's entirely capable, we have the process to do it much more efficiently. And so he, as my partner on a day-to-day basis, will continue to be my partner in this process.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Ryan?
Thanks. How will the See, Click, Fix app intersect with the work that you're doing, if at all?
That I'm not aware of to be able to answer.
So we don't have the See, Click, Fix app yet. And that would be a tool that would, once we have it, and once the team has developed it, that would be deployed to a number of city departments. So maybe for code enforcement, it would be something that's just sent to them, but it would also be sent to police when they see, or public works, or our encampment team. So all the teams will be trained on how that works, but it really would just be one way for residents to contact, just like they already contact the teams via email. So we would treat it probably in the same way as if we got a phone call or an email, it just goes into the system, and whichever department would be deployed. So,
Okay, and I just have, I want to follow up on the questions about the fire inspection. So if, say, a tenant is concerned that there aren't adequate fire alarms or extinguishers or everything they're supposed to have, would you suggest they call the fire, for the fire inspection, or would they go through code enforcement?
Right now, they go through several different processes. If they go through us, we're happy to get the fire marshal involved. If they go directly to the fire marshal, he can handle it too.
Okay.
I would not dissuade anybody from contacting anyone in my department to be able to handle that kind of a claim.
Okay, great. Appreciate that, because I was confused on who was what. Okay, Councilmember Vogely?
To follow up on that one, is there a way for people who have code enforcement issues to remain anonymous if, in fact, they are afraid of losing their home because of said violations?
Really quickly,
Can someone be like, my plumbing is backing up and my landlord isn't doing anything about it? Don't tell them it was me. A lot of my neighbors also have the same problem. Can you just help?
yes,
Click.
we do that now, and we will continue to do so, to the best of our abilities to keep the complainant anonymous.
Thank you.
Great. All right, thank you so much. We appreciate that, Tony. Any other questions, comments? No? Thank you, appreciate that. And with no further business and no executive session, we are now adjourned.